Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. You know, in this world, we face a tremendous amount of disruption, and technology is a key driver associated with that disruption, both good and bad. In IBM, we created something called the cycle of disruption, which is intended to really illustrate how disruption is affecting companies, right? It talks about this industry disruption and how that industry disruption drives new competencies. And these new competencies then enable this cycle of disruption, from new perspectives and approaches to new ways of working, to new discoveries and advancements, to ultimately new outcomes. And that's really what I want to focus on today. I want to talk a little bit about new outcomes. What are some of the outcomes that we're seeing and how we see that trending in the market relative to companies who have really adopted, really embraced this cycle of disruption? So when we look at companies who are successful in the cycle of disruption, it really comes into three main categories. One are those companies that actually make markets. A market doesn't exist today, and then they literally make it, and it's fueled by technology. The second are companies who make their competitors irrelevant. These are companies that figure out how to utilize technology and other discoveries and advancements to literally separate themselves from competitors in a meaningful way. And then lastly, we look at companies who are driving themselves to be a keystone of their ecosystem. So that ecosystem has a variety of companies within it, and they want to be at the center of it, touching all these different companies that sit within that ecosystem. So those three areas are really where I want to highlight around this idea of new outcomes. So let's talk about market makers, or those that make markets. A great example of a market maker, I think, is SpaceX. The idea of having interplanetary travel, right? Can you imagine saying that next weekend I'm getting on a rocket and I'm flying to another planet? It's kind of hard to really imagine that being the case, right? But in reality, that's in essence what SpaceX wants to do. They want to revolutionize space technology to such an extent that their ultimate goal is to enable people to live on another planet. I mean, I find this extremely exciting. And think about the benefits that could ultimately happen as a result of this. Not only is the outcome that now people live on other planets, but the outcome is a whole new type of commerce associated with that, right? Now, instead of getting your little fuzzy globe where you shake it up and it says, I was in Las Vegas, there's a fuzzy globe for Mars or Venus or some other planet that's out there. So I just think that that's fascinating. When it comes to companies that are making their competitors irrelevant, what comes to mind for me is a company called O-Power. O-Power actually has one of the world's largest residential energy data sets with 60 million utility customers for over 100 utility clients. Now, I don't know about you, but my relationship with my utility is kind of hot and cold, right? I have a lot of electronics in my house, and when I see surges come into my house, the first thing I'm scared about is, did the surge protector work to protect my big screen television? Then next to that, when I have storms, it's always, what are we going to do in case the power goes out? Like, you assume the power is going to go out, right? I don't know about you, but that really doesn't strike me as a great relationship, where I'm worried that you're not going to be able to keep the power up, or I'm worried you're going to damage my electronics just the same. And I think you see that across utilities around the world, where there's kind of some tough love, if you will, between the consumer and the power company as we're trying to get consistent power and energy. So OPRO has seen that as well and decided that they were going to develop a new type of user experience, where they used even behavioral science to talk about how they could engage their consumers in a meaningful way. You know, now when I think about the keystone of the ecosystem, there's a lot of different companies that are out there that really kind of fit into that category, but there's one that really comes to mind for me, and that's John Deere. You know, you think about the agricultural ecosystem, you have seed manufacturers, you have bioengineers, you have those that are interested in crop protection, fertilizer, the farmers, the tractors, other machinery. It's a massive ecosystem, and our focus is all around getting the most out of that crop. Now, more important than ever, as we have more and more people on the planet, with even more to come at faster rates. So John Deere has really embraced IoT technology, they've embraced wireless technology, even cloud applications, to figure out how they can provide as much data to the different members of that ecosystem so that they can maximize their per acre crop yields. So now, as an outcome, they're able to actually yield more out of every crop and do that in partnership with everybody else in the ecosystem, even their competitors. So that's the power of being at the keystone of an ecosystem. Finally, I really wanted to think about what this meant for me. What kind of new outcome have I had as it relates to how technology has developed new competencies for me in this whole cycle of disruption? And what comes to mind is my daughter. She runs in a program called Girls on the Run. And it's a program encouraging girls to run, get out and be active and run more. And she asked me, she said, "Daddy, will you do this with me?" And I said, "Honey, absolutely." She's 10 years old. I said, "Honey, I will do it with you." She said, "Yeah, Daddy, we're going to get it. We're going to kill it." And I said, "Okay, honey," with absolutely zero confidence that that was going to actually occur. So I set out a regimen for myself so that I just would do everything I could just not to embarrass my daughter. And that included getting a wearable so I could track things, getting a smart fabric that could read kind of where I was. And I even worked through some different apps to figure out how to model how I was doing, running on the treadmill and the like, to try to increase my performance to keep up with the 10-year-old running a race. And I'm happy to say my new outcome was I not only didn't embarrass my daughter, but I kept up with her through the whole race, and it was a meaningful experience between the two of us. A great memory forever. So you see how technology drives these new competencies that ultimately drives these new outcomes. And I hope over the course of time you experience these new outcomes as well. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.